Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its mission? To explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. That is the preamble before every episode of my favorite sci-fi series of all times, Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I love the original series. I love The Next Generation. I even love Deep Space Nine and some of Voyagers and some of Enterprises. And the new series I haven't watched that much of because I didn't get Paramount Plus until much recently. That being said, I have always considered myself an avid Star Trek fan. I have most of the movies, and it was inevitable that I would be talking about at least one of these films on this channel at some point. But which movie to start with? Well, the easy answer, and if you're a smart person, would be to talk about Star Trek the Motion Picture first since it was the first movie. But I'm not smart, so I decided to pick the movie that I felt is probably the best entry point for any new Star Trek fan who's trying to get into the series. The 2009 movie. I will explain my opinion in due time. But first, Star Trek 2009 was directed by J.J. Abrams, written by Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. And it was released back on May 8th, 2009 on a budget of about $150 million. And it was highly successful at the box office, making about $385.7 million at the box office and being nominated for 4 Oscars, winning one, the Oscar for Best Makeup. So, is this film truly a good starting off point for Star Trek fans? Especially considering its weird legacy that it would inevitably start. Well, let's get into it. So, for those of you who do not know, the 2009 Star Trek movie is actually a prequel of sorts. It's also an alternative timeline from the mainstay timeline, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically, this Romulan, for those of you who don't know, that's an alien race in Star Trek, comes through this weird storm in space and immediately attacks this other spaceship, the Kelvin, completely destroying it. The only one who manages to save most of the Kelvin crew is the captain, Captain Kirk, not James T. Kirk, George Kirk, his father. And this is the same time when James Kirk is born. And as some Star Trek fans might realize, that doesn't really seem right. And that's because Nero is from the future. So it's comes down to Spock, a very young Spock, and Captain Kirk, who was also very young in this film, having to band together and bring down this force from the future called Nero. So, yeah, like I said, this film is very apart from the Star Trek movies of old and apart from the Star Trek series as a whole, as it is its own timeline and takes place before any of those stuff happen. We focus on a much younger Kirk and a much younger Spock, played by Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto, respectively. And pretty much as they try to overcome their many, many differences to overcome a threat that they have never seen before, and one like the Federation has never imagined. Someone who has so much more technology and so much more advanced knowledge of how things work out that it's a tougher threat for them to deal with. And since he comes from the future, the destinies of these characters have changed, so it allows for the writing of the story to be a lot different. Some of you might be saying, wait, isn't him coming from the future technically a spoiler? I think we realized that pretty early on in the movie, that I think you can go in knowing that and not have anything spoiled for you whatsoever. As it is its own story, it allows itself to be different from other Star Trek films. Most Star Trek films are character stories or focus on a deeper political or sociological issue or philosophical issue. This one focuses much more on the action, much more on set pieces, and is more of an action science fiction movie than other Star Trek films that have come before it. Now, to some Star Trek purists, that is a problem. For me, I actually don't mind it a ton, as this film is supposed to be establishing these younger characters coming into their own. So it would make sense that we would have more set pieces as we see them struggle with things that are just completely out of their control and struggle against insurmountable odds. It's really a cool idea, and I really see where the director and writers were going with it. I do see some of the problems that a lot of Star Trek purists will complain about, especially when it comes to the character writing of Spock, as he's much more of an emotional character in this film as opposed to his much older counterpart. But that's the thing. He's a younger version of Spock. I wouldn't expect him to have full control of his emotions at this point. I mean, let's not forget, he did have emotional reactions in the original series, and he was older at that point. So it makes sense that his younger form would be much more impulsive and have emotional control issues. So for me, I actually do like what they did with Spock here. The character I have the most problems with is Kirk, as he's a womanizer troublemaker, and he doesn't get much more development outside of that, and he doesn't really go through an arc. He's the same person from beginning to end. He doesn't really feel like he earns the captain chair at the end of the film. And that's where I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So, yeah, this was supposed to set up a future installments of many different Star Trek films and have a long-lasting legacy. That legacy had Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond. Into Darkness, if I ever review it on this show, God help me. And Beyond, I didn't think it was as good as everyone else did. I honestly think that this is the best movie in the Kelvin timeline as it has become known. And that's unfortunate, as this film has a lot of potential and could have led to some wonderful future installments, but the direction they went with it is really odd, in my opinion. And I don't really understand some of the directions they went with future stories. So, its legacy, it doesn't live up to what the story and the characters initially give us. My problem with Kirk could have easily been wiped away if the next movie presented him with a compelling arc. And it tried, but it didn't work. And again, that's something I will talk about if I ever talk about Into Darkness on this channel. I really hope I never do that. But as for this film, we still have some great visuals. I really like the new style that J.J. Abrams brought to the Star Trek world. And I really like the idea of what his camera work and how he makes the camera move in all sorts of different angles to kind of give you the feeling that of the weightlessness in space. And the sound design is especially really cool when they focus on some of the silence in space. And the music done by, and I probably am going to mispronounce his name, Michael Giacchino. I apologize immediately if I mispronounced that name, which I definitely did, is really good. I have no complaints. I really enjoyed the score, and I feel like it gives some energy to this film. So, yeah, I enjoy the more action beats of this film, and I really think it's a good first impression for Star Trek fans. If you don't know what Star Trek is, and you want to try to get an idea of who these characters are, you could do worse than this. And if you're looking for just a film to introduce you to these characters, I would say the series is better at doing this. Yeah, definitely take this one and give it a watch. As for buying it, so the Blu-ray only has a commentary and nothing else. And yeah, I wish this had more to it. As it stands, honestly, I would say this film is a stream first, buy later. If you really like the film after you stream it, definitely give it a buy. But if you don't care for it afterwards, yeah. Anyway, that's what I felt about the 2009 Star Trek movie. It's not bad. I really enjoy what it was trying to do. It's unfortunate that the legacy it left afterwards just was not good. Yeah. Anyway, next time we will be talking about Booksmart. And until next time, live long and prosper.